Story 1: The Airport Kidnapping. In the summer of 2007, when I was 10 years old, my family planned a trip to Disneyland. To save money, we booked a midnight flight on a Tuesday, thinking that my two younger sisters, ages 8 and 5, would sleep through the trip. When we arrived at the nearly deserted terminal gate, we felt both excited and exhausted. My mother took my youngest sister to the bathroom, leaving me to look after the other. My father went to grab a quick snack from the cafe, trusting me to keep an eye on my sister. The atmosphere in the gatehouse was quiet and still. A middle-aged woman approached us with an overly enthusiastic attitude, her eyes sparkling behind her thick glasses. She seemed too friendly for the situation, put her hand on my back, and asked about our parents. I told her they would be back soon. Almost immediately, a man approached her, his cheerful demeanor matching hers. He introduced himself as one of my father's cousins, saying that he had just met him at the coffee shop. The woman and the man seemed a little too eager to connect, which struck me as odd, but I didn't think much of it. They both extended their arms toward my sister and me, encouraging us to follow them to meet their children. They led us out the gate, down the stairs, and toward the dark airport lobby. As we walked, I felt increasingly uncomfortable. The woman's smile was too bright, and the man's cheerful demeanor seemed forced. When I asked where we were going, the woman replied that her children were waiting outside in their car. We stepped into the cold, dimly lit parking lot, and my discomfort grew. I pulled my sister closer and tried to turn around, but the woman held my hand tightly. I broke free and tried to lead my sister inside, but the man held on tight. Panic set in as they began to drag us toward the parking lot. Our screams pierced the stillness of the night. At that moment, two airport security officers appeared, shouting at the couple. The woman and man released us and ran away at a terrifying speed. One officer chased after them while the other escorted us back to our parents, who were extremely worried. My mother cried, holding us tightly as she cried. The incident only lasted a few minutes, but the fear and confusion still linger in my memory. The whole experience was a disorienting blur of fear and relief. It was only later, when I reflected on the incident, that I realized how close we had come to a potentially dangerous situation. The couple's fake kindness, their sudden change in demeanor, and their attempts to lure us away from safety were chilling reminders of how quickly things can go wrong. The memory of their fading smiles and our cries will always haunt me. Story 2: The Kidnapping Threat on the Flight. It was a stormy February night when I found myself waiting in a nearly empty terminal for my flight to North Carolina. I was nervous about an upcoming job interview and hoping for a quiet flight. The terminal was sparse and the atmosphere was As I took my seat, a man sat down 2 seats away from me. It was an odd choice given the abundance of empty seats, but I thought nothing of it at first. I soon felt uneasy as the man's eyes fell on me. He leaned in close and whispered, "For the 2 men sitting across from you are planning to kidnap you when we land in North Carolina." Those words were so shocking that I could barely process them. Then the man got up and walked away, leaving me in a state of paranoia. When my flight was called, I boarded the plane with a feeling of extreme anxiety. I kept my eyes on the 2 men who had been pointed out to me. They were sitting in front of me, and their presence unsettled me. I tried to stay calm, but each look they gave me only made me more afraid. The flight was tense, my mind racing with anxiety about the possibility of a kidnapping attempt. After landing, I carefully watched for any sign of the 2 men. As I exited the plane and walked through the dark, cold parking lot, I spotted them hiding behind a red pickup truck. Their heads poked out, and when they saw me looking, they quickly ducked down to stay out of sight. I didn't know what to do, so I rushed back to the airport and waited for a taxi, my heart pounding. I breathed a sigh of relief when the taxi finally arrived and took me to my hotel. The whole experience was disorienting and left me with more questions than answers. Who was the man who had warned me? What were the two men's intentions? The uncertainty and fear of that night haunted me long afterward. Story 3. A horrifying bathroom encounter. While on vacation in Florida with friends, I had a nasty experience at the airport. We were a few hours away from our flight, and I desperately needed to use the restroom. To my surprise, there was a long line outside the main airport restroom. Frustrated, I noticed a nearby security guard and asked if there was another restroom I could use. She hesitated but eventually directed me to a little-known restroom at the end of a narrow, poorly lit staircase. Following her directions, I walked down the stairs into a dark, narrow hallway. The hallway was so narrow that two people walking past each other had to press against the wall. The dim lighting created strange shadows, making the space feel even more claustrophobic. I found the bathroom at the end of the hallway. It was small, dimly lit, and filthy. The heavy door creaked as I pushed it open, revealing an unpleasant sight: stained floors and dirty furniture. Even though the restroom was run down, I still needed to use it. I checked each stall to make sure no one else was inside. After confirming that the stalls were empty, I went back into the hallway to look around a bit. I was already tense from the ominous atmosphere, and the narrow space only added to my unease. As I looked down the hallway, I saw a figure standing at the end of the hallway in the darkness. The sight sent a chill down my spine. I quickly retreated to the bathroom, trying to convince myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. I locked myself in a stall, trying to focus on calming my racing heart. Suddenly, I heard footsteps approaching. The sound grew louder and clearer, increasing my anxiety. The bathroom door creaked open, and I saw the man's black shoes appear at the edge of the stall. Silence followed, and my fear grew as I realized the man was deliberately approaching my stall. The door to my stall opened, and I looked up to see the man's head peering over the partition. His eyes were cold and emotionless, and his expression was blank, as if he were in a trance. My heart pounded in my chest, and I couldn't help but scream. The sound echoed off the walls of the small bathroom, amplifying my fear. In a panic, I dashed out of the stall and ran up the narrow stairs, my mind racing with fear. I stormed into the waiting room where my friends were gathered. They noticed my distress but didn't press me for details. I tried to calm myself, but the horrific encounter haunted my thoughts throughout the holiday. That night, I had trouble sleeping, haunted by the image of the man's cold gaze. The narrow hallways, the filthy bathroom, and the man's unsettling presence became a constant nightmare. I regretted not reporting the incident to airport security, but shame and fear overrode my judgment at the time. The experience left me deeply anxious about public restrooms and the strange sense of vulnerability they can bring. Story 4. Home invasion after airport visit. My wife and I had just returned home from a stressful airport pickup. Her flight was delayed, and we spent a frustrating amount of time searching for her missing purse and keys. When we finally got home, Michelle threw her heavy bag on the bed, and I went into the kitchen to prepare a snack. Suddenly, Michelle's scream shattered the silence of the house. I ran upstairs and found her in the bedroom, visibly shaken, pointing at the bathroom door. Personal items were strewn across the floor, and the closet was open. It was clear that our home had been invaded. Michelle's voice trembled as she recounted what had happened. She had thrown her bag on the bed and immediately realized that something was wrong. When she turned around, she saw a tall man with a blank expression walking toward the bathroom. The intruder appeared to have entered through an open window, which was now jammed shut. In a panic, I tried to open the bathroom door, but it was locked. I pounded on the door with my shoulder until it finally opened. The bathroom was empty, and the window was wide open, providing an obvious escape route for the intruder. The realization that someone had broken into our home while we were at the airport was terrifying. Michelle called the police while I checked the rest of the house. We found no further signs of forced entry, but the feeling of being violated remained. The police arrived quickly and conducted a thorough investigation, but found no evidence of the intruder's identity or whereabouts. The unsettling knowledge that the intruder had stolen Michelle's belongings and might be hiding somewhere in the house made us nervous. The next day, we changed the locks and took additional security measures to ensure our home was safe. Despite these precautions, the memory of that night still haunts us. The thought of the intruder's cold, emotionless gaze and the invasion of our personal space has had a lasting impact. We struggle to regain our sense of safety and normalcy, but fear and paranoia linger after the incident.